I'm a PhD student in creative writing at the University of Sheffield, and my research is about what kinds of stories and writing styles can make tangible the environmental crisis of the oceans, and specifically of the South Holland coast. And I'm also really looking into the non-human experience of the environmental crisis. I did my rep with Endure, which is a European project really taking place in 4 different countries. France, Belgium, the UK, and the Netherlands. And ENDURE stands for Ensuring Dune Resilience Against Climate Change. And so the project really in all the different countries over several different pilot projects really looked into how can we use the natural capacity of dunes to solve issues related to coastal erosion and flooding. And I really helped them sort of with communication and vocabulary for community engagement. So really what I was trying to do in many ways, so I'll give a bit of background about the approach of Endure, just to be able to illustrate what I was doing. This sort of shift to so-called like nature-based solutions against flooding, such as using dunes, natural ecosystems, rather than sort of hard infrastructure, such as building dikes and seawalls. That really is quite a new sort of shift in policy, and it's quite important, of course, to gain enough support for this, and also to really start viewing kind of the natural world in a different way, because if you just build a seawall, you're kind of keeping things away behind a wall, so you don't really need to know how these ecosystems work, because you're just keeping it out and keeping yourself safe behind it. But with the nature-based policy, it's of course very important you actually understand how a dune works, what kind of ecosystem it supports, because only if you really understand that can it sort of come to its full potential in its capacity to work against flooding and coastal erosion. So this was really the approach of the project, and I felt, of course, it was remote working, it was still locked down quite a lot of the time, so I really needed sort of a lot of access to what they were doing. I suppose in a way what I was doing, particularly my main output was a vocabulary guide about how can we write about nature-based solutions as policymakers for effective community engagement, and also how can we adopt a vocabulary which is a lot less sort of anthropocentric, less human nature binary. And so what I was really doing with my work for Endure was kind of really finding kind of the expression of their entire sort of general approach on the level of language and communication. So it was really useful for me to be able to see like their sort of concrete pilot projects in action as well, because I had read about them, of course, to be able to start my work, but it was really useful to be able to go to Norfolk, where we did 4 site visits to different places, and I could really see sort of the work in action, some of what Endure had done with like different signage and new sort of paths and fencing, kind of finding a new way of communicating to people about how to use dunes safely. And we also were recording a podcast for some guided dune walks at the same time. And we met with some local wardens, so it was incredibly useful to learn so much more about how dunes work and sort of how specific the ecosystem is. And I think it was just incredibly enriching for the work I was doing. So because my PhD is about storytelling and the environmental crisis, I also incorporated some analysis of Dutch water management projects in my PhD work. And so this was really kind of an interest for me, sort of as a cultural phenomenon, these kind of nature-based policies. And yeah, so I was really thinking about sort of what can I do with that research interest outside of my own just very specific research. So I was very interested to be on the policy side of things, really, for once. And I already knew a bit about the Dutch context of sort of nature-based water management, but I was wondering what would that be like sort of internationally. And I was just really interested to be on the other side of things and to see how that works from the policy side of things. And so I really it gave me the opportunity to translate my research on writing styles into kind of, this vocabulary guide, which was about language on a completely different level, but I still really got to use like the research I had done. Definitely. I think the rep has absolutely had a very positive impact on my PhD research as well, because it showed me, of course, a completely different thing I could do with my research, which is really valuable to know. But also I got to sort of work with language and writing styles, and actually also using storytelling as a way for like effective community engagement. So it really gave me kind of a new perspective on how we can use language as well in relation to climate change and what we can do about that. So I think even though it was of course very different from what I do in my daily research practice, it was still very useful and kind of just, yeah, it really broadens your perspective and it's really quite enriching, I would say.